We left off with a heavy burden of loss and a Cassian that actually had some money for once. Last time he was very poor and owed a lot of people a lot of money. Out of the Aldani crew, the survivors are as follows: Vel Sartha, Cinta Kaz, and Cassian Andor. The rebellion will remember our fallen comrades. Terramin Barsona killed in action, Gorn killed in action, and Karis Nemec killed in action.
Right out of the gate, I do want to correct something from one of our previous episodes. In 105, I said that this was Andor's last time seeing Marva. That was incorrect because we do see her again when he finishes the heist and has some money to get off-world. I was wrong, Internet. Is that so hard to say? I don't think it is. But, you know who you are. You comment gremlins.
Welcome to Talk About Tatooine. I'm Andrew.
I'm Nathan.
And we are twin brothers here to bring you what's new in nerddom and give colorful commentary on our favorite subjects. Welcome to our cantina. Grab a drink and settle in as we set course for realities beyond our own.
Excellent, and welcome everybody to episode 107. Today's recording date is March 8th, and this episode will be released on Monday, the 10th. Today we're going to be talking about the next 3 episodes in Andor, Announcement Narkina 5, and No One's Listening. A very, very compelling arc, so I'm very, very excited to get in this. All right, just at the top of the episode, I do want to mention here, guys, make sure that you like, comment, and subscribe. If you guys are watching over on YouTube, follow the podcast on Anchor, Spotify, or Apple, wherever you guys are listening, and please leave us a positive review. That actually does help us out a ton, so we would love to get those. We technically start off with a spoiler warning because if for some reason you have not watched Andor Season 1 by now, Season 2 comes out in a couple of weeks, so this is technically a spoiler warning, so drop out now if you need.
I should point out, too, that they actually moved back the release date for Andor by 4 days. I think it was originally supposed to come out on April 18th, and now it's coming out on April 22nd, so we're going to be, just a couple days early. So we'll have to do one more episode in between our Rewatch series, and when Season 2 comes out, I had it perfectly planned and Disney screwed me.
I can't believe Disney did not take into consideration the wants and needs of a small podcast.
Yeah, honestly, it's quite rude, but as we like to say here on the podcast, don't frick with the Mick. He is very litigious. In case you are watching along with us at home, we are going through episodes 7, 8, and 9. Announcement, Narkina 5, and Nobody's Listening. So if you want to watch along with us, go ahead and pause this podcast, go watch those episodes, or just keep on listening. We open up on our favorite character and his pleasant mother, Cyril and Edie, respectively. She judges the very atoms out of his outfit and what it says about his job interview. She sucks so much. To our several thousand listeners across the internet, what's going on with Edie and Cyril? This is a messed up relationship. It's like a wicked combination of gaslighting, victim mentality, and some sort of complex coming from Edie Karn, the mother. Please report back as soon as possible.
And if there's anybody who says, wow, this is a pretty normal relationship, please seek help right away.
Yeah, please seek help. It's not normal. That's really bad.
After this pleasant interaction, we cut to the ISB HQ, and the Empire has decided to put up its, okay, you're going to have to help me on the pronunciation on this one, Marschstafel. Marschstafel. To put on its march to Feifel and take them for a stroll. Okay, brother, you can't write words into the notes that I don't know how to pronounce. What is this?
It's German for marching boots. So I actually did a little bit of research because I wanted to make a joke about how the Empire is like the Nazis. So I put, some German in there. And then I found an interesting little piece of history on the internet, and that one of these suppliers for boots to the Nazi party was Adidas.
There's a guy who does... Is it Ryan Kelly on Instagram and TikTok that does these hey, what you doing, buddy? And he does the historical product reviews. Does he do that? I feel like he does. Yeah, because he'll be like, what do you do? And he's like, oh, well, we used to make all these things. And you're like, well, that probably isn't used in war crimes. And then goes into how the company's involved in war crimes. So we'd love to see some more of that because it's super topical. There we go.
We might have to tag him when we post about it.
Absolutely. All right. So put on your marching boots and we take them for a stroll. I'm finally back on program here. Punishments include this is all coming from the ISB. a tribute tax 5 times stolen from Aldani, so they're trying to make their money back. Use of local customs as cover for rebel activity will incur the full wrath of the Empire. The Imperial spooks at the ISB taking the lead going forward per Palpatine himself on all investigations, no more local intermediaries. All outstanding fines and levies are to be paid in full. And finally, an emergency session of the Senate to pass the PORD, or PORD.
I don't think anyone calls it poured.
It's PORD!
Okay, so the Public Order Resentencing Directive is passed by the Empire in order to increase the length of criminal sentences and actually lower the bar required for incarceration, which is why Andor literally gets picked up off the streets when he goes to, I think it's Nyasmo, the beach planet. And they're like, you were in the wrong place. That's a crime. And he's like, what? Now he's on Narkina 5. I mean, that's in the next episode, or that's, I think, at the end of this episode, like the very, very last thing that happens. This has to be the most despicable legislation we ever see in Star Wars. I mean, to be fair, we don't see a lot of laws and ordinances, but the ones we do see and do show up on screen, they're never a good thing. So PORD, PORD is very similar to the Jim Crow era legislation in the United States, where slavery being illegal during that time moved to the next best thing, incarcerate. The Empire does use slaves, but it doesn't officially enslave humans. The Empire knows that it needs more labor than species like Wookiees and Geonosians are able to provide. So it lowers the bar on incarceration and starts taking in humans as well. Basically, anyone who can get its hands on, oh, that's a misdemeanor, 6 years in a work camp. Brutal.
Interestingly enough, Miro sees that the Empire's response will foment rebellion. She's 100% correct.
Fomenting.
That's exactly the plan for revolution across the entire galaxy. If you press the boot down harder, everybody will turn on you.
Yeah, she sees she's like, wait, hold on. Like, she's like, I'm not against the whole criminalizing everything, but this is going to make our job a lot harder as far as keeping things down from like full scale rebellion. Then we cut to Luthen and the Cave of Wonders. I should just note that this episode is really rapid fire, as in a quote unquote in between episode. Like, it does not slow down. It goes really, really quick. So we're going to be cutting between scenes as best as we are able. So Luthen and Mon are in Luthen's Cave of Wonders shop, and just here on the podcast, we want to stop so bad and talk about all the cool stuff in the background, but we have so many notes to get through, and we edit all of our own stuff, and it's just a ton of work, like the holocrons and the Starkiller suit.
Maybe that'll be our bonus episode before Andor comes out.
It's just looking through all of those scenes. That could be really interesting. On the comm, we gain some passing intel where we hear that 134 Donnies were arrested. So this actually like throws up into the air like whether or not Cinta is actually going to make it out, because she was not on the transport. And then we Luthen meets with Mon Mothma, and they speak of Aldani, and he confirms that it was him without so many words. Like, basically they are speaking as if everything is being listened to. Like, remember from previous episodes, Mon Mothma already knows that her driver is an ISP plant, so she's just got a snitch as a driver. So she has to be very careful about what she talks about. And I think it's in this scene that Luthen has to go into the back room and like does like his little dance, and it was like, yes, it worked. And then he puts a serious face on. He turns back to Mon and he says, turning back will be impossible. I told you that from the very beginning. If you want to be involved in this, there is no turning back, because it's sedition. It's treason against the Empire.
It's treason, then.
Every scene, every line, every expression is dripping with symbolism and double meaning. I love the dialogue in Andor season 1. It's almost as if we are approaching critical levels of hype for season 2, because it has such a high bar to live up to, at least for me. I loved this. It's probably my favorite Star Wars show by a lot. So season 2 doesn't deliver. Do we riot in the streets, or do we just...
Yeah, we riot because season 2 of Andor wasn't bad. Totally that. That's the reason. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's
Yep,
the
yep.
reason in 2025 in the United States that we decide to riot. Luthen also says, they have been choking us so slowly we are starting not to notice. We have to force their hand. And we can't hide forever, which is foreshadowing to season 2.
We then hop back to Cyril in the Bureau of Standards, which is literally just a corporate hellhole on steroids. Literally, the B-roll of this is that just like the camera panning out on cubicle over cubicle, and it just looks like it goes on for miles. It literally looks awful. Then, thankfully, we don't spend too much time there because that would kill all of us. Clea goes into the streets of Coruscant, following the symbols laid out by the ground to lead her to Vel. Super excited to see her back. This is the confirmation that the job has been complete on Aldhani. Vel does have a moment, only a moment, to mourn her crew and asks about Cinta. Clea sicks Vel on Cassian, because she is like, hey, by the way, you may or may not have left some loose ends. This is starting to ramp up, and we don't want to basically have somebody who knows what we look like, right? That's essentially what she's getting at. She reveals Cassian's true identity and says, this is what a revolution looks like, gives her her orders, and then we pan away.
Dedra Miro starts running massive searches for missing equipment, confidential and her eyes only. She is starting to see the connection between the seemingly random occurrences of stolen equipment and a larger rebellion across the galaxy. Also, then we cut to a scene where we find out that Cinta is alive. So we really, thank goodness, we don't have to wait too long to find out that Cinta is alive, because she was like the rock that like made sure that this operation moved forward. She was the one who bolsters Vel when they have to jump over the side of the dam. She's also the one who, when climbing down the ladder to meet the rest of the squad, executes that one trooper who is like barring their way, and she doesn't hesitate. She is the foundation of that operation in a lot of ways, and I'm really glad she's alive. And she gets some time to shine in the next couple episodes. We see her on Aldhani as a Star Destroyer pulls into the system, and just a quick RIP to the Donnies. They are so screwed.
Again, these are like nomadic people, so what an excessive use of force for these people. But that's the Empire for you. What more do you expect? They're like, well, got to teach somebody a lesson.
Let's see. At this point, Andor has returned to Ferrix. Andor does actually see Marva again. Like we said, we misspoke a couple episodes ago.
I had the same thought when I rewatched this. Literally, whoopsie. Time to pull that back a little bit.
Let's see. At this point, Marva informs Cass of Snitch Tim. Remember the guy who gets gunned down on the streets? She tells him, like, yeah, this is who ratted you out. But then Andor tries and fails to get Marva to leave with him. At this point, Marva knows that she is dying. She knows she is in really bad shape, and she just can't bring herself to tell Cassian. I mean, we only know this because we know how the season ends, but there are tiny hints. We can see her degrading condition in a couple different ways, and then in, I think it's either Narkina 5 or Nobody's Listening. Brasso mentions that they have to carry her home after she falls in public. And that's just an indication of her overall health being not what it should be. Bix also decides to stay and fight instead of run to a place that hasn't been tainted by the Empire. Of course, she would have been caught immediately because Cass has terrible choice in vacation spots. Marva is really, really energized by the events on Aldhani. She's so excited. She has like a lot of PTSD about when the Republic turned into the Empire and ended up murdering her husband and hanging him in the street. And there were like certain parts of town she couldn't even walk in, and now she's having the bravery to walk in those places again. And she says, I won't have peace. I will be worried about you the entire time. Or Cassian says that. And Marva just responds, that's just love. She's like, I know. You have to leave, but I have to stay. She also gives a kind of a haunting piece of wisdom or advice to Cassian, and she says, stop searching for your sister. It's a fantasy. There were no survivors on Kenari. That's kind of brutal to hear.
Well, it's a little bit of a shock to the watcher as well, because I forgot about the fact that like this whole series starts with Cassian looking for his sister, and you're like, hey, we're just going to make a quick callback to episode 1. That doesn't matter. That's a pipe dream. And it's a shock for Cassian and for us as the viewers. We then move into Mon Mothma's dinner party and her encounter with Tay Kolma. First of all, costumes are amazing here. Very, very nice. Well done. Mon wants to dish so bad, but Tay shows some restraint and urges her to keep it down. Like, hey, remember, you're being listened to by everybody. Tay does let slip, though, that he is growing tired of the Empire, and Mon is thrilled about this. Like, yes, you've let down your guard just a little bit. I understand where you are now. This is fantastic. Quote, it's a lie. It's a projection. It's a friend. It's a front. End quote. As long as everybody thinks I'm an irritation, they will miss what I'm really doing. Perhaps you find my politics a bit strong for your taste. New sticker idea?
We cut back to Cass visiting Bix, and now Ferrix is completely blaming Cassian for the damage, which I think they're right to do. Cassian basically brought the Empire and in this case, the Primor security investigation back with him. And a lot of people suffered because of it. And Bix tells him to go kick rocks. She's like, no way. At this point, Cass is a little despondent, but what he does is he pays his debts. He gives the money to Bix and says, hey, I owe these following people money, and I'll leave. He's trying to be as honorable as he possibly can. Like, he's not just a street urchin who does the wrong thing every time. Like, his primary motivation is to survive, but just below that, he does have a really strong moral compass. Cass has a flashback to Rick's Road, where his father figure, Clem, gets caught in a crossfire at an anti-imperial protest where he is gunned down by white armored clones. We can tell because the clones have just white armor and no colored markings on their armor that it is actually the transition into the Empire and not the Grand Army of the Republic.
ISB at this point has another one of their weird meetings where Blevin lodges a charge against Miro. He's just being petty here. Deidre understands that the rebels are on Deidre understands the rebels on an intimate level right out the gate. Blevin, what if everybody broke the rules like Miro? Partagaz, bet, let's do it. He's like, okay, that's fine. Cassian then escapes to the vacation planet Niamos. Niamos?
Niamos.
I don't know how to pronounce that. Sci-fi. Niamos. But can't really relax because no duh. The galaxy is massive and he is looking over his shoulder because the Empire's presence is ubiquitous. Also, his persona here, Keith Gergo.
So his first persona is Clem, based on his father. I don't know who Keith Gergo is. I mean, Gergo might be a made-up name, but usually the names he picks have some sort of significance. So I don't know who Keith is. Maybe it's a character we meet in season 2. Cass is arrested shortly after he starts his PTO. Not because he's discovered, but he's just in the wrong place at the wrong time and looks guilty. He actually looks less than guilty. He wasn't even running away, and a stormtrooper was like, actually, that's just as suspicious as the guys who are running. And he's like, what? And then he almost gets choked out by a droid.
On a verbal technicality.
Where it's a little unbelievable that the K2SO units are like have such a brutal narrative. They're like, hey, you can just order them to kill civilians. I'm like, that seems real sus. Cassian's encounter with the stormtrooper is harrowing, and I'm a white dude. Want to hang? Proceeds to almost get killed. Then he gets charged. Like, wow, I'm so glad our justice system isn't this messed up, because like it's just like bing, bang, boom. Like, we have already pre-decided your fate. Like, the judicial system in Star Wars, at least on this planet, is just a facade. It's just a direct pipeline to get people into the mines. They do yearn for them.
Only the children, brother.
Oh, you're right. Only the children yearn for the mines.
All right, so we get to Cassian's sentencing. He gets 6 years for literally doing nothing. They like give him a bunch of different charges, and he's sitting there like, what is going on here? So he goes to court, and the judge says, and I quote, "Not my monkeys, not my zoo. Judiciary doesn't give a His only crime was vacationing while being handsome. Am I right?
High five.
Nice. Seriously, though, unlawful arrest and trial is a serious issue and should stay in the public eye. Watch out there, homies. This is where we end the first episode of this talk today, of this podcast, not the first episode.
Let's move on to Narkina 5, episode, 8? Cassian is way too pretty for prison. Can we say that? Also, when they're loading them on the ships, why even ask them what their home planet is? They don't give a crap. They've already decided where they're going to go. Like, it's just a formality to pretend. Just to pretend like what they're doing is somehow just. So, I don't even know why they asked them. We move back to Cyril's cube farm. Honestly, that's my worst nightmare. No natural light, stuck in with like low cubicle walls, like barf. I can't imagine the drudgery and lame conversations that happen over the water cooler at the Bureau of Standards. Yuck.
How was the weather today? The same. Coruscant is climate controlled, dude.
yeah, Coruscant's climate controlled. What are you talking about? Did you see the big game last night? Yes, the Palpatines did very well and won. It's cool because of like its massive scale, like that giant office, but it's also awful because of just the guaranteed monotony. I work in a pretty dull field. I work in quality assurance and aerospace, and things only really get interesting when something goes wrong, which actually elevates my stress levels quite a bit. It's like it's in a normal day where things are going well, it's boring. It's a little boring. So I get it. He is carted off to ISB in the middle of his shift and meets Miro for some light interrogation. She goes, "You have engaged the curiosity of the ISB," and he's like, "Ooh," bites his lip. Other than that, he has basically nothing to offer the ISB because, remember, he's a bad cop. Not only is he both corrupt, but he's also inept. Like, he's bad at his job. When asked about Axis, i.e. Luthen, he describes his clothes. He describes Luthen's clothes as if that is a permanent feature of his body. Dude, what are you doing? That is bad police work. It's like he was wearing a sweatshirt. It's like, was the sweatshirt glued to his skin or could he take it off? Like, give me something to work on. It bothered me just a little. I'm like, he's a bad cop. He's stupid, but he's so like psychopathic in his tendencies that he's like a dog with a bone and he just doesn't let go. At this point, Dedra actually threatens him to stay in his boring ass lane and to never get out of it again, or she's basically gonna, like, I don't know, probably have him killed, put in prison, or sent off to the same prison that Andor is at, which would be very funny.
That would be a great way to turn a character against the Empire, just saying. All right, now we get to Narkina 5. This is a habitable planet or moon orbiting a gas giant. Oh, by the way, we are going to shock you all right out of the gate. This facility is so clean because so much of the punishment is a constant psychological threat of electrocution. It's cruel in sort of a genius sort of way. They do need to keep the workers at a minimum level of health, though, to work. Besides that, they are tools. They're like, hey, you can eat as much as you want, drink as much as you want, but you get a open cell, so whatever you do is seen by whoever's across from you, so take that as it will. The commands of the guards are so insane because they give constant commands, most of which immediately contradict themselves. Stop, go, stop. I said now, stop, go, move, stop. And you're like, dude. And the whole time they're like, I'm going to hit you with my shocky stick. Just so annoying. And then we get to the two most haunting words of this arc.
On program.
It's very interesting to me that Kino runs the ship because basically the guards got the prisoners to police themselves. And if that isn't peak capitalism, I don't know what is. It's chef's kiss, really.
To layer on top of that, though, you know who we never see get shocked is Kino.
It's true. He does not get shocked.
It seems like whatever his title is, his little cell director, he's middle management. He's middle management, and they have basically taken people from the ranks of the regular prison, elevated them just slightly, and they get a little too drunk on that power. They're like, this is all I needed. This is all I needed. I just needed a little bit of power to put other people in their place. Yeah, it is peak capitalism that they used middle management to control people. F in the chat for Olaf, dude. He's clearly struggling. Like, obviously because of his age, they're working 12-hour shifts, incredibly manual labor. It's like the clean conditions don't really show actually how difficult their work is. Like, it's hard. Like, of course the Empire doesn't care about the elderly. It starts with the aliens. They discriminate against them first, like how they enslaved the Wookiees and the Geonosians, and actually in Legends, the Gungans moved to a moon on Naboo, and the Empire, as soon as they take power, go to that moon and use biological weapons to eradicate every single Gungan. So, yeah, the Empire's they start with the obvious discriminations and basically the anti-human bias that they have. So the Empire starts with their discrimination against aliens, then they move to the poor, then they move to the worker, and then we see basically everyone else that they can discriminate against, in this case, Olaf, who's also elderly. We also meet Melshi. He's also in Rogue One, in case you missed it. He gets it right away. Melshi knows getting out normally is impossible. Like, they're not just going to, like, serve their sentences and magically be released. He's like, we are stuck. Like, as soon as he hears about the passage of PORD, or poured, as you like saying, he knows. He's like, this is it. He's like, this is clearly a front to keep us locked up forever and keep us labor, because our labor is too valuable to the Empire. Also, their working conditions, holy OSHA, Batman. That environment cannot be safe. Every single operation involving moving parts could crush a finger, or even worse. Every single time they touch one of those tools, there's almost no safety guarantees. The only safety feature I saw was when they like all have to grab the main drill and bring it down. It seems like it only activates when everyone's hands are on it, which is a safety feature, but there are so many features that aren't safe to do when they're manually pushing in these big heavy pins, dude. It is a miracle they're not losing fingers left and right, if I'm just being honest. They're using unguarded power tools that spin, and they're wearing long sleeves. Terrible idea.
Gets caught in everything.
Yeah, it gets caught in stuff. I didn't ask to watch these videos on YouTube, but YouTube is like, do you want to see somebody losing an arm into a table saw? Well, here you go. And it's like, all right, well, I didn't flip away fast enough, and now that's in my brain. Thank you.
Yikes.
So, God, dude, the internet is such a terrible place. Also, no one is wearing socks or shoes. The rampant amount of toe fungus that would happen here is astounding. Andor's bunkmate does say at one point that, hey, these cells get cleaned every day, but come on. They're probably not cleaned very well. And by who? Like, what, other prisoners? They're doing a half-assed job at best. Every single one of those prisoners is going to get athlete's foot, and it's going to be gross.
Then we see them in the hallway, and they all have this dead look on their face because they just worked 12 hours. That's exactly what I look like. I walked to school 5 miles uphill both ways. I've worked 12s before, and it's miserable. Like, you work them because you have to, not because you want to. Scrubbing toilets, by the way. I have also scrubbed toilets. I know you wrote that part, but I have also scrubbed toilets, and it sucks. I always try to get other people to do that. I'm like, nope, I don't want to do this. Nope, I'm good.
Yeah, I would love to say that, doing 12-hour work builds character. It's like, sure, my characters might be better, but good Lord, at what cost? Working on toilets is disgusting. I mean, somebody has to do it, and I did it for multiple years in a row. I'm glad to not have to do it anymore. Back to Mothma. Mon Mothma, they're at this party, and they're putting these like weird worm things in their drinks because it's a Chandrilan custom. So just to everyone out there, those worms are like a drug of some sort, right? They're probably like a psychedelic. It seems to me like that is a sort of that's like a drug or something. They're like, oh, it's a minor psychedelic or something. It's like they call them squigs. Squigs look weird, and because I am a vanilla and boring person, I would not try that. I probably would never try that. I maybe would do it once just to say that I did it, and then I'll be like, this is disgusting, and I'm never doing it again. Barf.
I don't know why I wrote "Oh my God" here.
Mon Mothma is in a casual conversation with a couple other senators, and they're talking politics. And there's like one guy who's very pro Palpatine, and he's very blasé about the whole thing. He's basically like, "So what if we are incarcerating criminals? They're criminals."
Right. And in these political parties, we get this Palpatine apologist literally says that he quotes Palpatine as being overreactive, easily provoked, but he always says what he means, so it's all right. Oh my God, who does that remind you of? The legislature? They don't give a f- Hear that, everybody? It's okay here because Palpatine says what he means. He is protecting us and fundamentally has our best interest at heart, so we better not worry. This is the same guy who also uses the phrase, "If you've done nothing wrong, there's nothing to fear." And I heard that so much growing up. Like, especially if they're like, if you get pulled over, well, if you've done nothing wrong, you've got nothing to fear, which is the dumbest thing to say to anybody who's ever had to encounter police while they're working before. If the government gets to decide what's wrong and right without your say-so, then yes, be very much afraid, because if you're poor, underprivileged, black, brown, female, or anything other than a white Christian straight male, you're going to get f***ed. The only question is when, not if. Oh, sorry, all of those demographics, I meant alien in this universe. My bad. That just slipped out.
Oh yeah, we meant Twi'lek, Geonosian.
Wookiee, Gamorrean, Geonosian, yeah, all the other... quick, name some weird things.
Oh, that was so weird. Star Wars has always used the xenophobic nature of the Empire as a very thinly veiled comparison to America's racist tendencies.
George Lucas got the idea of stormtroopers from actual stormtroopers, which were Nazis, if you didn't know. Anyways, I do think the costume design here is on point, and it conveys otherworldliness without being too dorky. Well done on the Chandrilan dresses. Very nice.
Yes, the costuming for a lot of the posh sequences is very good. We move back and forth really, really quick in this next part. This sequence moves absolutely at a stunning pace. Andor is only in prison for an episode and a half, and the writers here did so well with their space afforded. I'm constantly impressed by this show. Again, dangerous levels of hype for season 2. Please don't let me down.
Now, this is arguably the, I'm going to use some heavy quotations here, slowest episode of the season, and it is still so packed. The more I watch it, the better it gets. We get a really cool, interesting is probably actually a better word, look at exactly what propaganda the Empire is pumping out and how they are spinning the events. Andor is a primary source here. He was at Aldhani. The Empire, however, can spin it in whatever way they want. They can control the narrative as much or as little as they need to meet their goals. No amount of community notes is going to make the rebels come out on top here. They have to work with disadvantage as they plow forward towards freedom. So I'm going to be gross here for a second, and they have these open cells again for the 3 S's, which is shower, shave for the uninitiated. Just saying, I don't want to look at somebody who's pooping or be like, "Hey man, can you look around really quick? I need to take my third constitutional of the day because I decided to overflow on protein paste."
Oh gosh, you would not do well in prison because regular prisons are kind of also like that.
People better get cool with a lot of stuff really quickly.
They better get cool with a lot of noises. Their showers actually don't take place in their cells. It's really like a blink and you miss it scene. They're all carted off into a single room in basically marching order, buck naked, and then there's like a slight misting that is supposed to be their shower. And I'm like, there's no way that is cleaning them. It's
just Febreze.
I'm like, that is a lower level of cleanliness than the sonic showers from Star Trek. I'm like, there's no way. And I just have to point out, like, these guys are all going to get ringworm. They are coated in sweat, and it's not properly being washed off of them every day. They're all going to get skin-based diseases. Disgusting. Eagle-eyed viewers will notice that in Cassian's cell that he starts out with 2,190 days on his counter. That is 6 years. Sounds a lot worse, honestly, when it's in days. That sounds way harder. And then it's at this point, like they kind of are all going to bed and he's kind of like laying there. He's kind of thinking. And then out of nowhere, one of the inmates jumps out onto the electrified floor and offs himself. One of the guys yells out, "He rails it." It just shows like the terrible conditions. And like one of the guys, that prisoner who offs himself, I think he truly understands that he's not getting out. There's no hope. And he takes it upon himself to give himself hope in that moment. And I think that shows the brutality of the Empire. Then when we we cut away from that, we barely get enough time to kind of emotionally process what just happened. And we're finally back to where Brasso and Ferrix, and Brasso and Bix actually check in on Marva because they're just really good friends. I'm just like, we said it in the last episode, find yourself a friend like Brasso. And Marva needs help after a fall, so Bix and Brasso are there to help her out. It's at this point we see Vel and Cinta. Somehow Cinta made it to Ferrix, staking out the Andor residence, because they're trying to figure out, they're basically using Marva as bait, which also, so is the Empire.
Yeah, it's very important to remember that the rebellion is also happening at this point, and it's also brewing on Ferrix. Things are about to start happening, but Vel and Cinta are here to kill Cassian. They are not here to support the local rebellion, and that is really sad.
So I don't know that we ever talked about it, or really that it's ever really clear, but I would almost say that the raid on Aldhani was the official start of the Galactic Civil War. We kind of alluded to it in our thumbnail and title last video, but I actually would put a finger down on the timeline and say the raid on Aldhani was the start of the Galactic Civil War.
Absolutely.
Just my 2 cents. It's like, that was their shooting of Archduke Ferdinand sort of thing. Here we see Cinta's resolve and Vel, who's just absolutely exhausted. And then Cinta says to Vel, the struggle will always come first and we will take what's left. And you actually see in this scene that Cinta does not take her eyes off of the Andor residence, but she does reach over and grab Vel's hand to give her that physical reassurance, which she's very literally embodying. The struggle comes first because that's what my vision is on, but we take what's left because in her periphery, she grabs her partner's hand. And that's a beautiful, if not very haunting, symbolism.
I know we're here for a political assassination, but isn't it nice that we get to spend some quality time together? That's kind of what's happening in a more joking manner. We then cut away. Luthen and Clea shut down Ferrix in the communication line there. Luthen says, "I'm not slipping. I've just been hiding for too long." We see the coolest radio with dials and knobs and switches because Lord knows, every single one of those buttons and switches would get pressed and or interacted with if I was in that room. Luthen goes on the offensive. First to Segramilo. God, I hate Segramilo. I hate planet names so much. To meet Saw Gerrera, who is coming back in season 2. We know this. He's already been in the trailers. Anto Krieger. That name gets dropped a few times in this episode. Luthen wants to unite the disparate rebel cells because he knows what the rebels need to do to succeed. It starts with oppression. Oppression breeds rebellion, but then someone needs to bring them all together. I am the only one with a clarity of purpose, says Saw. Which, again, if you guys keep in mind, Saw Gerrera is essentially a terrorist. He is everything, no propaganda is needed when it comes to Saw Gerrera's rebel cell, because they are actually terrorists against an evil empire, but they do terrorism. Back on Ferrix, we see Pac get taken in. He and his son are in every single Ferrix episode, and his son goes on to construct the Big Boom. During the roundup, Bix is targeted and she runs for her life. Bix passes Pac on her way in and he looks rough. She got napped. She did not outrun the Imperials here.
Yeah, we really go from she's running and then, oh, psych, she's captured, because this episode really moves so fast that they probably filmed her getting captured, but it's we just have to show her getting brought in. Pac and his son, I think, are also, they're background characters in the episode 3, Pock's son, who's also the guy who throws the pipe BOMB over into the Imperial lines in the very last episode. He's also the very first person to start banging the gong, or banging his little alert piece of metal hanging out of the front of his shop when the Premor police show up. He's like one of the very first people, if not the first person, because he gets it. He totally gets it. We're moving on to episode 9, guys. Thank you for sticking with us. We're on Nobody's Listening. Side note, I can tell the intro music is different every episode, but I can't tell what is trying to be communicated through the differences. If someone smarter than me could let me know, I'd really appreciate it. The start of this episode flips between Bix and Cassian quite quickly. Please stay with us. We are right back with Bix being interrogated by Dedra Muro. Again, our favorite Ferrex female is getting the short end of the stick. We can't forget about Dr. Gorst and his headphones of madness. Dedra speaks this line, which I think is, she's very serious. She's a very serious evil lady. The worst thing you can do is bore me. Oh, ha. Yikers.
Yeah, not something you want to hear from somebody who's about to try to scramble your brain.
At this point, Dedra Muro lets Bix know that Salman Pak, remember the guy we just talked about, he cracked and spilled the beans on Bix being a fence for a known rebel, who in this case is codename Axis for the ISB, who we know as Luthen. Whether or not she supports the rebellion, she sure as hell doesn't support the Empire, and she still gets the hammer dropped on her. Like, I truly believe that, like, Bix, I think, is just trying to get a better life. And because she doesn't support the Empire, she's like, yeah, of course I'd have no problem selling stolen Imperial goods. And the Empire's like, well, we're going to have to really screw up your brain now because of that.
Back on Narkina 5, Andor is performing well in his new prisoner with jobs role. But Ulaf starts to crack. Ulaf is the next man out. So reminds me of the librarian from Shawshank if Ulaf actually made it out. So he's got like 22 days or something left, like 3 weeks basically left on his counter.
Yeah, not that much.
Bad things start to happen. The massacre of the Dizonites and their own recorded death screams. So we go back to Dr. Gorst here. Again, everything is like moving very quickly. The pacing of the episode and the cuts is going to be kind of taking us back and forth quite a bit. So Dr. Gorst basically tells us that, like, oh, by the way, when we had to complete this compliance, we recorded it for posterity. A bunch of children got killed, and because of the specific anatomy of this alien species, the audio essentially makes people go crazy. So the audio cuts here, and all you see is her frantic breathing, leading to a blood-curdling scream. Is one of the more freakier things we've seen in Star Wars, and we have gone on record saying we want to see more Star Wars horror, and that would be a great way to do that. Andor takes his run, i.e. his bathroom break, but is really just damaging a water pipe. Water and electricity don't mix, so this is going to work well for them. He came up with a plan in almost no time at all. Dude is so smart. They find out that the elevator isn't wired and there's a weakness in the prison. I mean, I get it. Not everything can be electrified unless the Empire is willing to kill its own people. So things are really starting to move in the episode Nobody's Listening.
So we cut back to Bix, and I don't even know how to describe her condition after she's put through that auditory trauma. It seems like she's almost in shock.
It reminds me of shell shock.
That cut to her, 10 seconds. Immediately, we're back to Ulaf. Again, the pacing is just, it's up, it's going, things are happening. We see Ulaf start to show more mental degradation. Diverging again, we see Mon Mothma. Okay, so in 30 seconds, we've cut between 3 characters. We're back to Mon Mothma in the Grand Senate chamber, and people are actively jeering her while she's giving a speech. They're shouting her down, and they're flipping off their lights, and they're showing her how useless she is as a senator. The entire legislature is a sham. So we see that, like, Mon Mothma is totally discouraged in her role, and we cut back to the prison. Taga and some of the other guys are starting to communicate long range to the other crews in the work facility via sign language, and the power flickers in a hydro-powered facility. Guys, I'm just going to get on my nerdy little horse here. Hydropower is super consistent. And it's especially with the amount of generators that they have shown on the schematics. Really, the only thing I can think of is like when they're all like, oh, that's really worrying that happened. They're like, yeah, it is really worrying that happened, because to make the lights flicker in such a powerful facility, electrically speaking, it's not good. And I mean, we find out exactly why. And Taga is right. Something is really wrong on 2. Kino barely keeps order, and the guards threaten instant retaliation to disobedience. So the guards are starting to lose control of the station. One, because they made a mistake, because they're bad cops, and they sent a person back where they should have sent him off planet to another facility. But then that's how they find out that people are not getting to go home after their sentences are done.
Right. Which also that would have leaked eventually anyway. Like, there's no way you wouldn't know that unless you're like, hey, just so you know, don't say anything, or will, you know.
Well, and like, there's not a lot of communication happening to the families of the people who are incarcerated, because it seems like Andor's incarceration, between his initial arrest, his time before a judge, and being shipped out onto a different planet, all happens in like the same day. So if he did have family on Niasmo, which is the planet he got kidnapped from, basically he would have just disappeared. He would have just disappeared, and his family would have no idea where he went. They wouldn't know that he has a 6-year sentence all of a sudden. They wouldn't know what planet he's going to. They would have just been, he's gone. He's just gone. And I mean, we see that a lot with like secret polices in different nations around the world that are very authoritarian. People just disappear. They disappear and they end up in Siberia, not to name any specific countries, but
Quick, think of a fictional name.
Prussia. Oh, wait. Then we cut back to Vel, who shows up at the Mothma residence, and she repeats Cinta's vision again, because Cinta is a cornerstone and like a moral foundation of the rebellion. She says the rebellion comes first. We take what's left. What does he have you doing? Said Mon. And Vel just turns to her and goes, who? I don't know who you're talking about. Like, and she replies with such like steel in her face. She's like, we can't talk about him. Not here, not anywhere. Like, you know who it is. I know who it is. We don't need to talk about it. It's a great rule. Little espionage.
We then cut back to Cass talking about breaking out with Kino, and Kino just wants to keep his head down with less than a year to go. Why bother listening to us? They don't care. Nobody's listening. Such a great cutout at the end of the episode, by the way. Then we go back over to Deidre. We see what she's up to at the ISB headquarters. She's commuting, apparently, between Coruscant and Ferrix. That's awful. She was able to crack Bix and ID Maya Pei, who viewers will recognize from Luthen's conversation with Saw, another dead rebel cell. Deidre starts to suspect a link between Andor and Aldhani based on the witness accounts.
At this point, we come back to the prison, and they fried 100 men. Kino starts to wise up and tell his men, we heard nothing. He's saying, he's like, guys, at this point, we do actually have to keep our heads down. He is not saying this as to like, oh, maybe the Empire will just treat us well if we have good behavior. He's like, no, I do realize that they are actually pulling all the strings and not being truthful about what's going on here. But he's also saying, to keep us safe for the moment, we didn't hear anything. We're just going about our day. We're not going to do anything crazy.
He's also not wise to the plan at this point. So
correct.
He's like, hey, we don't have a plan. The rest of everybody knows that there's a plan, but he does not.
Yeah, he doesn't want to whip up his guys into a fervor just for them all to get electrocuted too. Like, he knows that, like, he's like, oh crap, I'm not going to get out soon. Like, he's got very little time left on his thing, and he's thinking, he's like, but I'm not going to die now, is essentially his thought. So excited to see Cyril and his mother again. What a treat. They have a really weird conversation where Cyril is like, I know you've been snooping in my room. I have ways of knowing. Ugh. She then gaslights him and refers to her son as an investment, which that seems like a great relationship. And seriously, a therapist or counselor could do a number analyzing their relationship. There's probably videos out there like real life therapist analyzes this weird family. Oh, they're so weird. They're so awful. We cut back and Olaf is just looking rougher and rougher. Again, the pacing of these episodes has not slowed down one iota. We move to Mon and Vel. Mon says to Vel, just be a spoiled rich girl for a while. Remind people that's who you are. We've chosen a side and we are making something of our lives, is what Vel says. She basically takes Mon Mothma's advice and is like, no, I'm not going to do that. Like, she's like, I'm not going to take a vacation from the rebellion. Like, I essentially am like, I'm going to support the rebellion regardless of what it does to the life I left behind. At this point, Bix is still a captive. The scene lasts 5 seconds, no dialogue, and she's in a rough spot.
Again, subtext is everything here.
Karn, at this point, is now stalking Dedra Meero, and then he thanks her. He literally waits outside her place of employment, which is, guys, that's a weird thing to do. Don't do that. She is right to threaten him. I am going to say that. She's like, if you ever come near me again, I'm going to kill you.
Yeah, don't do that. That's stalking.
Yeah, that's stalking. Don't be weird. The people who have been like shipping Karn and Meero online, they're like, oh, but they're like made for each other. I was like, no, like, I don't like Dedra Meero, but she has a sort of normal's maybe not the right word. She's not a psychopath like Karn is. Like we said from the very beginning that Karn is a messed up dude. Like, don't regardless of how terrible of a person Meero is, like Karn I don't think is even capable of having a healthy relationship without a massive amount of therapy. So don't ship them. That's gross. Even for a government full of creeps, she's totally creeped out by him. This quote from Karn really kind of just like makes me want to barf a little bit. Just being in your presence, I realized life was worth living. Guys, don't say that to a woman. Do not say that.
Big red flag.
Big red flag. Where's the red flag guy? That's nasty. That's weird. Don't say that. That's some freaky nonsense to say to a stranger. Textbook incel behavior. Why do women not like me? Exhibits A through Z, honestly, is your behavior, you weirdo.
You weirdo. Yeah.
We cut back to Mon speaking to Tay, and he lets her know that her finances are more transparent than she thinks. And then they bring up the topic of a man named Davos Skolden, who that name has never been spoken in Star Wars before, but the dialogue between Tay Kolma and Mon Mothma tells us everything we need to know. Here, Senator Mothma refers to Skolden as a thug, and I actually wanted to harken back to Nemec, where he grapples with the reality of Andor being a paid member of the crew and concludes that the rebellion cannot afford to turn people away. If they are willing to help, then it doesn't matter how they got there. Mothma has not yet come to this realization, and Nemec is not alive to enlighten her.
We then learned that one of Anto Krieger's group is caught. They mention Kafrene, which is where we first meet Andor in Rogue One, another rebel group dead. And then we get into the hard part of this episode, and the kicker right into the last quarter of this season. Olaf has a stroke, and because there's nothing they can do for him and he is expendable, all they can do is hold him as he starts to die. The medic comes over and basically says, I can't help him. I can't help anyone. All right, Dr. Kevorkian. Andor tries to get info, and the doctor just looks at him and says, keep your men in line. Kino at this point looks like he wants to absolutely murder the doc, which I totally get it. 100%. And it takes very little, let's say, light interrogation from these two before the doc spills the beans and confesses how they wiped out an entire floor to cover up sending someone to a different floor instead of a different prison. This time, when Andor asks about how many guards are on each level, Kino responds, never more than 12. The revolution has begun.
The revolution has begun.
Loads shotgun with malicious intent. Guys, this is a tough series to watch right now because there's too many parallels with what is going on right now in the US. Just saying. That does make it really, really fun, because sometimes you're just like, God, I just need to hear how horrible it is out there. And then you watch Star Wars and you're like, oh yeah, it's a good shit. And it's just, I don't know, it's weird. There's probably something wrong in my brain. Let's go into news from the HoloNet before I descend into madness. Dune 2 won 2 Oscars because of course it did. It was amazing.
I think it won best costume and best VFX, which totally tracks.
Yeah, 100%.
We actually saw some people in their own like custom made still suits at Emerald City Comic Con, and they were really good.
Those are some of my favorite costumes I saw while we were there. Some of the best cosplay there.
On the social media end of things, eagle-eyed fans of the show will notice we are not on Twitter anymore for largely the same, or for a lot of, you can probably pick up where we stand politically. We think Elon Musk is a tool, a taint, and a terrible human being. So we don't post on his platform anymore, but we are over on Blue Sky and Threads. Like, I know Threads is still owned by a different megalomaniac, but it's, I don't know, it's slightly different. I don't know. It's weird having to be on platforms to grow our platform that are owned by people that are awful. If it looks like a goose, sounds like a goose, and steps like a goose, 'tis probably a goose. Disclaimer, that is no affiliation with the Silly Goose Brigade. We should say that we were also at Emerald City Comic Con. That is a positive bit of news this weekend at the Seattle Convention Center, and your hosts got to go. This was both of our first time going, and it was awesome. In fact, at the time of this recording, it's still going on. We are hoping to be more of a part of the Washington State Convention circuit as time moves on. So if you see us, say hi. Nathan, what was your impression?
So my impression overall was it was like really cool to see everybody's costumes. I want to go again, but I definitely want to have a plan. I want to, kind of get a better idea on who is going to be there during the con and when, because we just bought tickets and we were like, hey, let's go, let's show up, let's see what they're doing. Because again, we had never really done this before. So I'm excited to go back. We did get to see Adam Savage. I did not get to actually like interact with him because I was like, hey man, I'm just kind of looking around for now. And the line was super long to go see him and expensive. We did get to see some cool stuff. I believe Nathan Fillion was also there for part of the convention as well. Did not get to see him though. Overall, there's definitely some things that I want to do for next time we go back to make it better. And I will say we went as normies. We did not have cosplay or costumes or even our lightsabers with me. My lightsaber that was up on the wall stayed right here the whole time. I think I do regret leaving it here because I felt like I would have just had more fun because there was a lot of other people with lightsabers. And I was like, man, I feel like I'm kind of missing out right now.
There was even an Ultra Sabers booth, which was really interesting because they're who we get a lot of our lightsabers from for the August lightsaber giveaway. So if you guys made it this far in the episode and you're not subscribed, do that because we do give away lightsabers every year.
Yup.
Yeah, I really enjoyed Emerald City Comic Con. There's a ton of stuff. There's a ton of planning to do, and you have to do it months ahead of time. I'm glad we went, but yeah, we definitely could have, I think, enjoyed it a lot more if we had planned it out a little bit better, but I'm glad we went. I think the most memorable costume I saw was the guy in the Venom suit.
It was so gross.
We saw a guy in a Venom suit.
A skin-tight Venom suit.
Yeah, basically just a morph suit with a Venom print on it. Biggest bulge I've ever seen. Biggest bulge I've ever seen. Unbelievable. So distracting.
It was so hard to suppress my laughter. What were you saying the whole con? We listen and we don't judge. We listen and we don't judge.
We listen and we don't judge.
And I'm over here like openly judging.
Yeah, I try to be a very tolerant person, and I think people had a lot of fun. For lack of a better terms, I think some people really got to fly their freak flag and had a great time, and I'm honestly here for it. It's just the bulge caught me off guard. It was a little in my face, for lack of a better terms. I do want to point out, we don't talk about Star Trek very often on the channel. I've been getting into a lot of the new Star Trek, and can I just say, it's so fun. It's so good. Star Trek Strange New Worlds Season 3 is actually coming out later this year, and it's a show that I've really gotten into. It's amazing. Getting into the old and the new Star Trek has actually been a wonderful experience, and I highly recommend it. Moving on to some video game news, Gears of War E-Day has a leak stating that 2026 is likely a release year. Repeat after me. It's a rumor.
It's a rumor.
There we go. Now we're all on the same page. This is a rumor. If we have actual news substantiating this, we'll let you know. But it's a rumor at this point, per Game Rant, which I would say a pretty reputable source in the gaming news sphere, that it's not going to be released this year, which honestly isn't too far of a reach. And here's why. It's March and its Q1 is almost done and we have no news on E-Day. It just doesn't track that we would actually see a 2025 release date, considering a quarter of the year is done and we haven't heard anything.
Yeah.
Makes sense. Yeah. At this point, I'm like, yeah, I didn't think it was going to be in 2025. So, okay. Rumor number 2 is that Gears of War might be released on the PlayStation as well. And I think that's amazing. I am thrilled. More players equals a better community. And Microsoft seems to be going the way of allowing their IPs on PlayStation, according to Vice. We will keep you posted on the validity of these rumors because personally they do give me a lot of hope. So often the market does not favor the consumer, so this is really good news. Nathan, do we have any news about Star Wars Eclipse?
I tried to come up with something witty and I was like, no, you guys know the deal. There's no news here.
No, Potter. There's no news on Star Wars Eclipse.
We'll get news on the eclipse when your parents come back.
Damn.
Sorry. That feels like something Snape would say. I mean, he is constantly roasting Potter.
The only way you could be any stupider is if your parents dropped you on your head. But they couldn't because they're dead.
All right, guys, we're going to finish this one out. Huge thanks to all of our patrons, Mike, Isaac, David, Colmbrew, who supports us over on Twitch. Just so you guys know, I forgot to mention this at the top of the episode. I am going to be going back to school this month.
Yay!
Yeah, I'm super not looking forward to this. So that means our Twitch schedule, our streaming schedule, is going to be getting cut down. Not cut completely, but cut down. So Andrew's going to be doing most of the streaming if you're able to do that. So have fun shouldering that, brother. Appreciate it. Love you. But I will not be doing that because the idea of taking that extra time outside of already writing, recording, and editing this podcast will be too much. It's going to be a good time. But keep in mind, guys, you guys can support what we are doing over here for $5 a month so that we can continue to do awesome things like giveaways, gaming events, and higher quality content. It is due to your support that we are able to make this all happen. However, we're always a long way from where we need to be because I think for the last 100 episodes, actually for the entirety of this podcast, we've basically only had 3 patrons. So we need your help. Please consider watching. We've been doing this for a while. If you guys can't do that, follow us on YouTube, subscribe, like, and interact with the videos. That is super helpful and does not cost you anything. Also, make sure you guys check out Andrew's YouTube channel, Panic, where we post gameplay videos where you can just watch in the background while you study your new game. Thank you so much, everyone, for watching. Every single one of you watching is amazing, wonderful, and probably pretty handsome and beautiful. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe on this video so we can find its way to as many people as possible. And until next time, may the Force be with you.